Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
I'm Connie Shaw, and this is my husband, Jim Wright. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with a prayer. Beloved Lord, we ask you to provide, through your mercy, the maximal blessings, expansion, and healing that can be accepted by all those watching this program. Please increase our capacity to give and receive love and to be motivated to give relief to all those we encounter who are suffering in any way through sorrow, pain, confusion, loss, alienation, or hunger. Let them deeply feel your divine love through each of us. Let us also pray for the suffering people of Japan, Indonesia, Iran, China, Papua New Guinea, Etna, Sicily, St. Vincent in the Caribbean, Peru, India, the United States, and all others who are now refugees due to earthquakes, tsunamis, fires, floods, landslides, or war. Lord, please protect each one of us from the aggressions of other people, from illness, disease, or accidents. Please help us to transcend our egos and help us to hear your continual guidance more and more clearly. Let us seek to unify our will with your divine will in order to help you with world uplift and to easily employ the many gifts of the Spirit which you're giving humanity now to fulfill our life purpose of knowing, loving, and serving you within ourselves and within others. We thank you, dearest Lord, for the wealth of grace that you are now conferring upon humanity and the current outpouring of interfaith spiritual renewal and revival that is moving across the earth to bless, to heal, and to awaken humanity to our divinity. We thank you for mercifully eradicating for other people addictions to drugs, nicotine, alcohol, food, TV, phones and screens, porn, and violence. Please replace pain and sorrow with joy, gratitude, and blessings so that we all might jointly bring forth the new golden age of peace and plenty that has been foretold in every faith, creed, and path for this time. We thank you. We love, love, love you. And we praise you, dearest Lord. Keep us always close to you in our hearts and willing to do your will. Amen. Now we have, a disclaimer, which you're familiar with. We're not medical doctors, don't diagnose or prescribe. We provide resources for educational, inspirational, and research purposes, and this video is protected by the U.S. Constitution and is never meant to harm or bully anyone in any way, but merely to inform other people.
And then there's one other
And
one.
it's time to take out your notebooks and pens, in case you forgot those, to jot down notes. And we also saw a sign that was in a library that's very germane to these times. So we'd like to share it with you. It says, please note, the post-apocalyptic fiction section has been moved to current affairs. Yes, it does seem like we're in a post-apocalyptic section of time right now.
In our invitation, we asked you to write in ballpoint pen the number 555, or God consciousness, on your foot or leg so that you can reinforce your goal of reaching expanded consciousness. You can also write this number on a slip of paper and keep it in your wallet or your socks. You can further ask God to give you self-realization in this lifetime, if that's your desire. As you know, that is the goal of every lifetime, although most people are not aware of that since they have no experience with a trustworthy spiritual teacher who can lead them to that experience.
Today's topic is Samadhi. Actually, it's supposed to be pronounced Samhadi. with a brief touching on the Pranava or Om sound and a brief reference to Kundalini energies. My qualifications for addressing you today on these topics is a 25-year history of varied experience with Kundalini energies and with fixing my mind on the sacred Pranava tone or Om, and with numerous Samhadi activations. There are countless definitions of Samhadi, but one that I would give you is from my own experience and was later corroborated by the writings of the late and great Indian author and spiritual teacher Sri Gopi Krishna of Srinagar, North India, after those experiences had already happened to me. Thank heavens I found his writings. Now, Jim is going to lead us in gazing for 5 or 6 minutes, and after that we'll have a 10-minute meditation followed by a teaching on Samhadi activations.
The Masters have started being with you the moment you came into your rooms and sat down, and they may have been with you all day today. We are invoking them to help us as we proceed through gazing and the meditation that will follow. So right now, if you would please place your hands face up in a receptive position and put them down on your legs or in your lap, whatever's convenient for you, whatever's comfortable. And uncross your legs, your ankles, unless you're sitting on the floor, in which case whatever position you're in will be just fine. So just get in a very comfortable position with your back as upright as you can be. And we're going to think of 3 or 4 wishes or intentions that we have for ourselves or for our loved ones. These intentions can be for good things that we would like to have come into our lives or their lives, or they can be for the removal of troubling things that are bothering yourself or your loved ones. These intentions or wishes can have to do with anything whatsoever. They can have to do with your spiritual life and your life purpose, with your selfless service activities, with your leadership roles. Most often they have to do with our bodies and our health, or our emotional situations, or our relationships with other people in our lives. Often they have to do with our financial situation or our jobs. They can have to do with anything at all. So why don't you take a few moments and get those wishes or intentions very, very clearly in your minds. While you're gazing, just look into our eyes with very soft, relaxed look, almost as though you're unfocused. Just a soft, relaxed look. No need for an intentional staring or trying to transfer energy back and forth. It's not necessary. And while you're gazing, allow your minds to become blank, empty. Let all of your thoughts drain away. I know this can be challenging, and while you're gazing, you may in fact notice that you've had some thoughts coming back. That's okay. It's not unusual. Just go back to empty mind. Let those thoughts drain away and continue your gazing with no thinking. We always precede gazing with a breathing and visualization activity in which we imagine our consciousness dropping down into our spiritual heart center, right in the center of our chest. And we do that while we're breathing, and at the end of our out breath, we may notice a physical feeling in our heart center. And it's at that point that we are connecting with all that is. And we're connecting especially with those people with whom we intend to have a close connection. We may have that intention right here today to make a connection. And occasionally those people actually feel something happen. They may have a little shudder or something right at the point where you're doing that. So let's do this together. Let's breathe in together. Now breathe out, imagining your consciousness dropping down into your spiritual heart center. And at the end of your out breath, notice that feeling, that special feeling in your heart center. Let's do that once again. Deep breath in. Breathe out. Consciousness down into your heart center. One last time. Deep breath in. Breathe out. Consciousness down again into your heart center, noticing that feeling, connecting with all that is and with some special person or people that you're wanting to make a connection with. Now, if your eyes are not closed, close them. And imagine the quantum field of love deep out into space. However you imagine it is the right way for it to be. See it enveloping everything in the universe, including you and all of those around you. And now feel free to open your eyes and come back to your room. We know that many of you lay out photos of loved ones on the floor. Some of you hold them up on either as individuals or on poster boards or larger sheets. Now's the time to put your photos up facing us. And we'll begin gazing right now. Thank you. The masters would like for us to meditate for about 10 minutes while they continue to work on you. Connie and I will leave the screen during that time. So don't worry, we will be coming back for the remainder of the program. Let's start with 3 ohms, and then we'll end the meditation with 3 shantis, peace, peace, peace. So let's begin right now. And let's begin our meditation now.
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Now it's time to come back into the room and we'll begin our presentation on subjects to do with Samadhi.
But before we do that, I do want to mention closed captioning, which we should have today done by YouTube with their translator from what we're speaking back into written English. And I believe you get that by clicking on a CC button down towards the lower right of your computer screen. So I believe that is working today. And now we'll go ahead with the program.
Thank you, Jim. And now we have a chart of the Samadhi definition. A number of people who attend these sessions are blind. So we like to read the charts so that they know that they're up and what they're saying. Number 1, it's the highest state of steady, silent meditation at which complete union with the immensity of God is reached. Also, number 2, it can be an ecstatic, wondrous expansion of consciousness wherein one is powerfully indrawn to the light of the Atma, the true self, or Holy Spirit. 3, it's a suspended state in which one doesn't seem to exist in the conventional sense, but rather as the vastness of being. And then 4, bliss can be the overriding state of wholeness and a complete surrender to all that is. And then number 5, it can last for minutes, days, hours, or weeks. Now, the correct understanding of the significance of Samadhi is to be emphasized rather than the experience itself. In other words, it's happening because it's part of your evolutionary energies in your divine journey to experiencing ultimately yourself as divine. Now, first, the significance of my particular samadhis were these. And it's important for you to understand, all right, this experience happened. Do I feel any different afterwards? Do I feel more expanded? Do I have more strength or capacities or insights? For me, it was that the world is not real, and therefore it cannot provide lasting happiness. I always knew that theoretically, but I absolutely saw it for sure. Secondly, I'm not the body, mind, or emotions, but am divine, and so is everybody else, though most people don't yet know it. Third, death is not to be feared, as it's only the dropping of the body, like an old cloak, after so-called death, and there is a continuity of consciousness after you leave the body. We live forever, though in different forms, in an ongoing adventure. Now, there are 3 levels of awareness. Duality, where most people think the world is real, and whatever is not seen by them, they think doesn't exist. Next, qualified duality means that a person theoretically believes the world is not permanent, but they can still get caught in traps and illusions. And then thirdly is the highest level, or Advaita, or non-duality, wherein a person does not misidentify themselves with their name, form, body, mind, personality complex, and doesn't fear death. He comes to discover that a divided mind, which most people have, a monkey mind, is misery, whereas a one-pointed, disciplined mind is joyful. It takes physical and spiritual preparation for the final transformation to be able to withstand Kundalini energies and Samadhi activations. Now, I would like to say, too, that Samadhi activations don't just happen when you're in meditation. They can descend on you very quickly with no warning whatsoever. When you're wide awake, you're riding in a car, you're walking across a room, or doing any number of things. And they can knock you flat onto the floor, which has happened to me and others that I know. The reason it's important to study the three levels or aspects of being is that Advaita, or non-duality, is natural to man and is itself happiness. That misery is purely man-made. We create our own misery, and it is born and maintained by duality alone. So when you understand that there's much more than just this apparent physical materium, then you realize there are ways to be happy while living in the body on the earth.
Even though I didn't have any spiritual teacher until we met Sai Baba in 1982, and he changed our lives greatly for the better, I did have an experience at a very young age when I was 11 years old that I had with a close friend, a neighbor from across the street named Kenneth. So one day in Akron, Ohio, we were walking with our tennis rackets in our hands towards the tennis court at the nearby high school. And while we were walking, Kenneth brought up the subject of free will. And we started to talk about that. And we came to the conclusion that perhaps this life that we were observing and that we were taking part in was all part of a script that had been pre-written, and that we were simply experiencing a 3D movie of that script unfolding moment by moment. The script has been written. And he said, yes, that's absolutely what I think too. Now, Ken later went on to get a doctorate in divinity at Yale. So this was clearly right down his path. And then he went to serve as a chaplain in the Vietnam War, where he sadly met his death.
But we know there is no death. It's just that we can't be seen anymore without the body.
So after that, I wondered about many of life's persistent questions. And I later left the Lutheran and Methodist churches. I began meditating, and I investigated various spiritual teachers without any real success, as many of you have done as well, I'm sure. We discovered Advaita, or Western Advaita at any rate, or non-duality in A Course in Miracles in 1978, 4 years before Sai Baba appeared to Connie twice while we were in Singapore and invited us to come to India to see him. Now, both Connie and I had various levels of leadership responsibilities in the world. We traveled often internationally, and we had 3 teen-aged children by that point in time.
So Jim has shared something about his youth and awareness. When I was 3 years old, living in a devout Catholic family, I first heard the Om sound, or Pranava, in my head and thought of it as my God sound. That meant that I was safe and that God loved me. I was aware also of the presence of Jesus and Mary throughout my life, and I saw a few angels in my youth. I was very shocked to find out that other people didn't hear the Pranava, and they didn't see saints and angels, and they didn't want to hear about it, and they told me I should never talk about it. So I had nobody to talk to at all about these things when I was growing up and also in my adulthood. I did, regarding my future life, vaguely know that I was supposed to do teaching and healing when I grew up, but I didn't know what that meant or how it would look. I kept hearing in my head, "You're going to be a teacher and a healer." I just had to wait for it to unfold. When I was in my 20s, I knew for certain that God was on the earth and that I would find him. He probably lived in India. Actually, he does. I could just feel that he was here and he wanted me to come and find him. Now, all of us, too, are divine, as Jesus and all the great messengers have taught, but we don't yet know we're divine. When I was little, I loved studying the lives of the saints, and that gave me a lot of questions. But at age 14, after quizzing the nuns and priests around me in parochial school, I felt that they really weren't equipped to answer my deeper spiritual questions. In fact, they didn't even know what I was talking about. At age 19, when I was in university, I left the church and pursued undergraduate courses in education and communications at university, and subsequently in psychology and spirituality afterwards. When we met Sai Baba, I asked him to give me self-realization in this lifetime. I kept begging him for it in my prayers. So finally, on one of our dozens of trips to India, 55, he called us in for an interview, and he said, I heard you ask me for self-realization the first time. You don't need to keep asking me. I already heard you. I'll give it to you in my time, not your time, because you have a husband and children that need you, and you have many responsibilities in the Sai Center and in leading service projects and in your counseling work. Meanwhile, just keep doing your spiritual practices, meditation, prayer, your studies, service, counseling, and family life. I'll give it to you at just the right time. Don't worry, don't worry. In 1980, Mother Mary began appearing to me, and subsequently for many years, along with other saints and angels. In 1984, I became a vegetarian. Between 1984 to 2009, Kundalini activations began suddenly and lasted for 25 years. There were a lot of fireworks during that period, and I didn't really know what was happening, and I had no one to talk with about it. I'm not complaining, just explaining. Now, in India, we learned about the 4 states of consciousness: the waking state, the dream state, the deep sleep state, and silence. We're not going to spend time on this today, but it's good to know that there are 4 states of consciousness, and that Samhadi can be most experienced in silence. Now, we have 2 Kundalini charts. All right. Kundalini is the vital energy located at the lower end of the spinal cord. It's pivotal in your transformation from an aware spiritual child to a powerful spiritual being. You are not in control. That is absolutely true. If you just surrender to the process, allow it to happen, and don't kick and scream and fight and resist, you'll be much happier, and you'll have a safe process. All right? And it also, the Kundalini energy rises up the spine to illumine the chakras, the endocrine system, and the brain, releasing powerful light and gifts of the spirit as aspects of man's inherent divinity. When my first Samadhi activation began, it was 1984, and I was working as a management consultant to business, government, and industry. Jim was away on a 6-month temporary assignment for a multinational corporation and was living in Israel, so I was in Colorado living at our house by myself. One day, I was attending a personal growth workshop when a new, overwhelming experience began to overtake me. Uh-oh, I said to myself, uh-oh, something's coming, I don't know what it is, I have to get to the restroom fast. I ran out of the room, dashed to the ladies' room, and ran into the stall panting. Am I going to vomit? No. Am I going to faint? No, I didn't usually vomit or faint. What's happening? I asked myself. Just then, a feeling of nausea swept over me, and I heard a ripping sound, as if a large, woven wicker basket were giving away at the bottom. Then suddenly, I had a vivid vision of myself about 2,000 feet above the earth in a hot air balloon basket, the bottom of which suddenly gave way and released me into space without a parachute. I was tumbling head over heels, flailing around, and then in the vision finally hit the ground, uninjured, but very shaken, wondering, what was that? Well, the entire experience only lasted about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I recovered my composure and rejoined the class, wondering what had happened. There was nobody that could tell me what had happened or that I could consult in any way about that experience. And Jim was working overseas and he hadn't had any of these experiences, so I had absolutely nobody to talk to about it. Kundalini energies began to move along my spine with hot and cold flashes, and at any time of day or night I would suddenly get very hot, would perspire, and then would become extremely cold, even on a hot day, and I experienced dizziness, appetite swings, and increased intuition, and a desire to avoid crowds and people in general. I just wanted to be by myself. Then periodically, Kundalini Shakti Ma, as I called her, and I thought she was rather vicious at times, she would seem to grab me by the nape of the neck like a gigantic St. Bernard dog, snatching up its little pup and by the scruff of the neck and seeming to fling it around. Well, this would periodically hit me from the back, and I would just feel that this energy was flowing through, or it would wallop me from one side or the other, and I never knew when it would come. It was just the most amazing and uncomfortable and undesired experience. But I just had the feeling, hang on, it's all right. You've been through this before in other lifetimes. It's part of your developmental process. So I didn't doubt my sanity. I just didn't know in what category to put all this. 4 years later, on August the 1st, 1988, I had just returned from a 3-week trip to India, and Jim, who is always so sweet and taking care of me in so many ways, picked me up at the airport, and when we got home, he carried my bags into the front hall, kissed me goodbye.
Hello.
Oh, kiss me hello and goodbye. Because
Hello.
then he had to return to the airport to take a plane for a trip because he was now going overseas for 3 weeks. So we would have been apart for 6 weeks total, 3 weeks for me in India and then his 3 weeks. And then finally we would have a somewhat normal life after all that. So I closed the front door after him and sighed happily that I was in peace and quiet of home after the chaos of India. And then when I took 3 steps into the living room, all of a sudden I was hit forcefully from behind and knocked hard to the living room carpet. I rolled over on my back to find out who had done such a rude thing as to knock me down on the floor. So I looked up from my back on the floor, and overhead, about 12 feet above me, I saw the blue-white Atma, or Presence of God, or Holy Spirit, standing above me with its feet anchored in my heart. It looked exactly as it does on the chart of the Presence of God, which you can find online. Exactly like that, only it was real. It was my Atma, my Holy Spirit, and there it was, and I could not move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't roll over. I couldn't do anything. As I looked at it, I felt enormous bliss, and meanwhile, it was emitting a neon blue-white stream of rain, blue rain, into me, which lasted for 20 days. I didn't know this was going to be a 20-day experience. I just thought maybe this would be an hour or 2. Now, here are some features of my Samhadi activation. And the reason we're doing this video is so that you can become an advocate for your own spiritual awakening. Most of the people around you, including your physician or a therapist or a spiritual mentor, will not be able to help you in this process unless they have some intimate experience with it themselves. Now, number 1, I was forcefully knocked to the ground for 20 days, as I told you. 2, the Atma hovered above me all that time, sending its blue rain flowing from it. And then 3, this was proof that this existence is a hologram. It's an illusion, and there's nothing outside of it. 4, I felt powerful waves of bliss strike my heart. Boom, boom, from both sides of me, 5 feet out. And I just felt a tremendous shimmering of lovely light blue energy all around me. I was more ecstatically happy than I had ever been in my life, and all fear of death left me. 5, after 20 days, I kept a journal of the unfolding events that were still not over. This was just the first part. The second part was that immediately 84 specific phenomena began. And as it turns out, after this video is complete, within 24 hours, we will send by email each of you an article that I've excerpted from my book, Mary's Miracles and Prophecies, Intimate Revelations of a Visionary, and they list the totally unexpected 84 things that happened to me after I stood up on day 20 from this exquisite experience. And most of those gifts of the Spirit and charisms or blessings gradually faded away in about a month's time. I felt it was a glimpse into the divine power and beauty and blessings and mercy that are awaiting all of us as we finally complete our spiritual puberty and adolescence and come out the other side as divine beings who are able to harness and direct and flow energy when it's needed for divine purposes. Well, when I was finally released from this experience, I could again, on day 20, hear nature sounds and traffic sounds, which I could not hear during the 20 days. Also, I glanced over and saw that my luggage from India was still sitting in the front hall. And I looked down and was shocked I was still in the same clothes. I needed a shower. I needed to drink lots of water and get some food. Number 6, then for about a month ago, as I said, these gifts eventually faded away. But I immediately took copious notes to keep a record of what had happened to me, and I outlined the 84 charisms and gifts of the Spirit, which we're going to send you, and my books, Wake Up Laughing and Mary's Miracles and Prophecies, as I said. Some of those involuntary experiences, we're not going to bore you with the whole list, but they were X-ray vision, mind reading, bilocating, prophecy, healing, spontaneous writing, spontaneous singing, hearing buzzing in all of my meridians up and down my arms, and seeing auras around trees and people, plus having many apparitional visits of saints and angels. Now, you can look forward to this article, as I said, within 24 hours. Now, later, after that very long Samhadi experience, the activities that kept me grounded were walking barefoot in the grass, resting my feet on large cobblestones, drinking lots of water, doing yoga, and reading the books which I had just discovered of Gopi Krishna. Now, he was considered a spiritual genius, and during his samadhis, he spontaneously came to know 7 languages which he had never studied. He wrote exquisite Persian couplets or poetry with perfect grammar, though he had never studied that language. Now, when reading his books, I came to know that not only were my experiences quite normal within our evolutionary design by God of becoming divine people, but that these experiences were to be sought, or at least something to be thankful for, and not to dread. What good news that was! I began to feel normal. I was just normal in a different paradigm. Now, another highly regarded person who was also a saint, like Gopi Krishna, was Sri Anandamayima, or bliss-saturated mother of India. Can you look at that photo of her without feeling blissful yourself? Oh, what an exquisite being. She also had a long Samadhi activation like mine, but hers lasted 23 days, and she had a retinue of attendees to push drops of water and morsels of food into her mouth and to dress and bathe her. And the people that were attending her would just push the food and water in her mouth and then move her jaw around and say, "Swallow, Ma, swallow," while she was in ecstasy. Well, since I was home alone for 3 weeks and had no retinue, I would just periodically crawl to the kitchen for a few crackers and a drink of water, and then crawl back to the living room floor. I had no more ability to move than that. On day 20 of the Samadhi, I felt like a fly encased in a jar of honey. It was so sweet. It was blissfully sweet. But I felt I just couldn't take any more of it. It was wonderful, but I was saturated to the maximum. I begged God to either take me home to him, i.e. heaven, the other side, or stop this entire Samadhi right then. I said, and if you take me home, Jim is probably going to be very surprised when he comes home from his trip and he sees me dead on the floor of the living room. And our children are going to be very shocked. So probably it would be better if you just stop this right now, if you don't mind. Obviously, I can't stop it myself. So, Lord, would you please stop it? It's wonderful, but I can't take any more. And immediately, upon my request, everything stopped. In a few minutes, it was all over. I was back to my normal consciousness, and I stood up, and I was greatly changed from then on. It was all due to the grace of God, and had nothing to do with me or my volition. These experiences just kept ambushing me at any time or place for years and years. I'm giving you these experiences in case such things happen to you, so that you won't feel so alone or isolated or wondering what on earth is happening to your mind and your body, and where is the switch to turn it off. 3 more strange Samadhi activations happen after that. I call these 3 the glass head bilocation, which I'll tell you about in a second, then the Alice in Wonderland experience, and the 9 sounds of the Om and the spine, which had been predicted hundreds of years ago in my Shukanati reading. They were right there saying it would happen on that exact day. Amazing. So in the first Samadhi activation after this, I was just sitting minding my own business on the sofa one day when suddenly, without warning, I shot out of my body, that is, in my spirit body, and experienced myself out in the galaxy, hanging in space, as if my head were made of transparent glass, and I could see in all directions simultaneously. The stars, the planets. It was exquisite. I felt totally at one with everything in existence. I had no fear of anything. It was just boom, shooting up, and there I was hanging like a giant Christmas tree ornament in space. Well, that experience probably lasted about 15 minutes and was accompanied, as I said, by a sense of bliss. So naturally, I went right back to my body without any effort. Obviously, the Atma, or the Holy Spirit, is operating all these processes and knows when to shoot us out, when to bring us back, and how to help us to endure the whole thing. Now, in 2009, I had just emerged from a palm manuscript reading at the Shukanati Foundation in Bengaluru, India, when I approached the waiting rented cab at the curb. Now,
Not this palm.
No, it's palm leaf. That's right. Shellacked palm leaves that are very ancient, that were read by Sage Shuka quite a long time ago about our particular role in this particular lifetime. As I understand it, there are about 3,000 of them in existence, and most of those people that are featured there, and most people are not, those people will play a significant role in these times regarding helping the avatar, Sai Baba, with world uplift as we move into the golden age of peace and plenty. Now, the reader, Mr. Gunjar Murthy, had said that on that very day that I was slated to experience the 9 sounds of Om in the spine, that it would happen, and then I would verify it with him. So he said, "Has this happened to you, madam?" I said, "Well, no, but you've given me so many dozens and dozens of pieces of evidential information that Sai Baba would make me 3 rings. He would manifest a lingam, that I would bring groups to India, scores and scores of times. But this is the only thing that hasn't happened. Isn't that curious? I wonder why. How is it supposed to be? How will I know?" He said, "Well, you'll just have different sounds that will be sounding inside your spinal cord, inside your body. Probably you'll be the only one that will hear it, but you'll know for sure. And this is part of Samadhi activation. It's part of becoming a divine being, which we're all in the process of doing at various stages." Well, all right, I thought, if you say so, that's fine. I'll just wait and see. So it was very puzzling to me that it hadn't happened, because everything else had happened perfectly. We got into the cab, and then wham, all of a sudden I went into an altered state. The traffic sounds faded into the distance, and I felt as if a glass bell were being lowered over my body. And in this altered state, all of a sudden, these 9 sounds very clearly began to emanate from my spine. Involitionally, all by themselves. They just knew what to do. There was a gong sound, bong, and then a conch shell tone, and chimes, and a bell, and then 5 other sounds that sounded like musical instruments that I wasn't familiar with, or some other kinds of bells, and they just went up and down my spine, and I just sat there, stuck, could not move inside this invisible glass bell. And then finally, they stopped. The cab was moving through traffic. Other people were in the cab, and I was just paying close attention. Then the glass bell seemed to lift off of my body, and we went to the airport eventually, and everything was fine. The next year, now this is under the category of the significance, or what I think is the significance of these various experiences. So this is my story about the 9 ohms in the spine. Maybe it's not true, but this is what I think is true. The next year, Jim and I and 2 friends were invited to Malaysia to give a talk. We did give the talk, but actually what happened was that instead the Lord had arranged for us to go to 5 different venues in Malaysia in 5 days, and he healed 750 people of all kinds of amazing ailments, injuries, and illnesses. If we had known what was going to happen and that I wasn't just going there to give a talk, we probably would have been too nervous and would have declined the invitation. But all glory to God the Father. It all is due to him. He's the doer in all of us. In 2010, in the next Samadhi, Jim and I were riding up to the mountains in the car, and I was minding my own business. I was just admiring all the beautiful Colorado pine trees beside the road, when suddenly I felt strongly propelled out of my body and yanked backwards by the hair, like Alice in Wonderland falling down a giant rabbit hole, backwards. As I was tumbling over and over and over backwards, I saw vivid images of various people that were standing right beside the inside of the rabbit hole. And as I kept falling backwards, I realized that each one of these beings was one of my former lifetimes. They were various roles I had played in the past. And the first one, I was a British duchess who had sold all of her wealth and property to become a renunciate with Shirdi Sai Baba in India. So she took a ship, sailed away, and sat in front of his little Duni fire the rest of her life, being his ardent devotee mostly spending time in meditation all day, every day for years. Maybe that's why these samadhis are happening now. There was a build-up to it in the prior lifetime. Who knows? Next, there was a country maiden on a farm in Europe. And as I kept tumbling backwards down, deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, then there was a nun in Europe. And then there was an aristocratic governess whose name was Madame d'Adomère. She was a governess to the children of the royal family of King Louis XVI. She was a student of Saint Germain and the royal palace of Versailles, France. And she was beheaded along with Marie Antoinette and King Louis and the whole family in the French Revolution. Next, there was one of the disciples of Sri Shankaracharya. Then there was Lydia Purpura of Philippi, Greece, the first European convert and disciple of Christ, and his benefactor through her business, which was a business of dyeing clothing purple. So that was why she had the last name Purpura, Lydia Purpura. Next, there was a devotee of Lord Rama, a devotee of Lord Krishna, a compatriot of Kabir the poet, and many other lifetimes depicted. As this over and over tumbling was happening, there was no sense of this name or form or this nationality. Nothing connected with this Connie Shaw person who's playing this role right now. After about 10 minutes, the tumbling stopped and the altered state subsided, and I came parachuting back into the car through the roof in my spirit body and returned to a normal sense of awareness, wondering why the experience had happened and what it signified. And I said, "Jim, you'll never guess what happened to me right now." He said, "Another one?" I said, "Yes, another one. It just came, wham!" And then I told him what happened. In each of the Samadhi activations, there seemed to be a new energy distribution, which was happening throughout the body, and also a subtle shift in perception, and also an expansion of capacities as a result. The personality, that's this one, changed from being one of a very talkative, outgoing, sociable person to becoming very quiet and spending a lot of time alone in silence after that. There was a new hypersensitivity to noise, light, odors, and crowds. And Gopi Krishna talked about that too. So I felt quite normal when he kept revealing all the things that had happened to him, and so many were happening to me. Now, there was a new restraint of emotions. I was always very ebullient and chirpy and cheerful, but all of that subsided. Then Jim, on the other hand, went from being very quiet to telling a lot of jokes, as I had done in the past, to his becoming more talkative and outgoing. It seemed we had traded places without intending to do so. It was completely outside of our own volition. Now, when Gopi Krishna was asked if Samadhi was the same thing as being born again in Christianity, he said yes, it was. He quoted Jesus as having said, quote, "Unless you're born again in the Spirit, you cannot attain the kingdom of heaven within. This experience is known as the second birth and is the activation of the Holy Spirit and the inner kingdom, which normally takes years of preparation. It can take decades. It can occur to anybody, and it's found in the mystical traditions of all the faiths, such as Christianity among saints, in Zen Buddhism, among Sufis in Islam, in mystical Judaism, in Sikhism, Jainism, Zoroastrianism, and so on. So you see, it far transcends religion, doctrine, or ritual. It's way beyond that. And it's usually not found in Orthodoxy, since in Orthodoxy, the emphasis is usually on the priest, the minister, or the rabbi, and on rituals. But it could be found in Orthodoxy. It's just generally not the case. Now, we're going to talk about the sound of the Om or the Pranava and the secrets of the Pranava or the Om. And we call them secrets because a person has to do some work in order to have the secrets revealed. So, the harmonic, this is Om, is the combination of the harmonic group of sounds, ah, oo, and merging into the inaudible, thus representing the ultimate reality. Now, focusing on Om in your head or your heart will provide continual revelations, and I can tell you that from experience. When you do this, there will be continual revelations like a waterfall of insights and awareness coming upon your consciousness, and it will aid in your manifesting ability. What that means is, if you need something, if you just keep fixing your mind on the tone, I call it, then you will see that it will appear. Now, there are some things I'd like to tell you. First of all, by this stage of life on the path, you probably have few desires left, and you wouldn't be seeking trivial manifestations for entertainment or desire satisfaction. The Om is not for that. Remember how Jesus and Sai Baba and many great masters and beings have been able to manifest. That's the type of thing that we'll be able to do in the future as we continue to allow our individual process to purify us. Now, I'd like to mention one thing here. I hadn't intended to mention it, but I feel I must, and that is this. Let's hold the chart on that. Okay, could you let that chart go? Just let's erase that chart. Okay, and not put any charts up yet. Thank you. We had a friend who died 2 years ago. He was in good physical shape. He was youthful looking and acting for his age. He was a chiropractor. And he had many Kundalini experiences, but he did not know the terms for them. And one day we got to talking about my particular experiences and health around that and so on. And he said, "Oh, I've had those. I call them my knockdown experiences." I said, "Oh, you've been knocked down to the ground too?" He said, "Oh, yes, I have. In fact, about 4 times a year, I'll be minding my own business, walking across the carpet in the living room, and boom, I'll be knocked down and I can't move for a day or two." I said, "The same thing has happened to me." Well, I did not realize, and it wasn't my business, but one day he happened to mention that he liked meat. He ate a lot of meat, and they also drank alcohol. And I just got this frozen feeling around my heart that, and this was not a moral condemnation, it was that the body is purifying so many aspects of the subtle and the physical body. When we go through Kundalini activation and Samadhi experiences, that it's imperative that we don't take drugs or alcohol or meat, because that could clog up the work, so to speak, and create great difficulty, if not death. A year after I had that frozen feeling around my heart and the sense of dread, he died of congenital heart failure. And it was shocking to everybody that knew and loved him. I never mentioned anything about not taking meat or alcohol because it wasn't my business. And I thought, well, God's taking care of him. He's leading a disciplined life. He goes to bed at 9, gets up at 3, meditates a lot. He sees his chiropractic clients. He tends his garden. He's doing everything he knows without a physical teacher, and it's not my place to warn him, so I didn't. Obviously, he was fulfilling his role exactly as he was supposed to. Now we're going to show you a chart of Kundalini diet and lifestyle, which is so crucial. First of all, Gopi Krishna says it's really important to eat non-spicy, easily digested food. Secondly, to stay well hydrated, drink lots of water. 3, to avoid crowds and aggressive people. And I would like to tell you this. when Kundalini activation happened with me, all of a sudden, people's reactions to me became very strange. And with men especially, they seem to have this push-pull approach toward me where they seem to be drawn to me, and then they would begin to need to dominate me and just do all kinds of strange things, which I did not appreciate. So be aware that when you are changing, everything about you is changing, and the body becomes more magnetic, and you can get some unwanted attentions. Just be aware of that, and that's why it's good to stay out of crowds, away from parties, and any excitation. Now, number 4, it's good to keep your ordinary person cover. That is, don't let people know this is happening to you. Just seem to be very unaware and innocent, and so that people will just overlook you, and they will not think that there's anything about you that they want or that they need to find out about. And this avoids jealousy, attacks, and, as I said, attempts to dominate you. Now, it's good not to smoke, do drugs, recreational or otherwise, or alcohol if you have drugs for your health, and obviously you need to see a physician about that. And then no numbing out. In other words, don't try to mood alter yourself to try to get away from this. You cannot get away from Kundalini activations. You're in the process. You are in the chute going down the sliding board at Water World, and there is no way to stop until you go splashing into the pool. All right. Now, it's good to avoid thrill-seeking, zip lines, bungee jumping. Why I said that is that you might begin to feel very empowered and very big and very capable. Your ego is dying, and it wants to maintain its position in your life, and it will try to make you take risks or do thrill-seeking. That's just the ego, and you just say, thank you, Fluffy, for sharing. Now please go sit in the corner and be quiet like you would a little yappy dog. That's your ego. Next, it's good to rest and to read. And if you like music, to listen to soft music, don't upset yourself in any way. Just surrender to the process that's happening. You might need to take more naps. Your sleeping patterns might go haywire. You might not be able to sleep, or you might sleep in the day, stay awake all night. Just go with it, and you'll be fine. Surrender. And then also, I used to do a lot of strange things like panting. These funny panting noises would come on me as the Kundalini was blazing up my spine, and I would go like that, or grunting and groaning. And Jim would say, what is with all these noises you're making? And I would say, I don't know. The body is just making these noises, and there's this fire going up my spine, and the only thing that relieves it is making these noises. He said, well, do whatever you have to do. And then finally, it's best when you're in the midst of one of your stages of Kundalini or Samadhi activation, not to go walking around, especially in a city, alone, especially if you're a woman, or driving by yourself when you're in that state, or shopping or traveling alone. See if you can find a companion, or go when other people are going where you want to go. Now then, here are a few signs of awakened Kundalini. These are very brief. There are scores and scores. There might even be hundreds of them. There are so many. So much is happening. Our whole body and psyche are being totally transformed. So, we have swings in body temperature and hot flashes and cold flashes, as I said before, perspiring for no reason, emotional ups and downs, heat in the meridians, buzzing of your meridians, expansion of your abilities and gifts of the spirit, involuntary torso bending front and back and side to side. And it goes like this. And I can always tell in gazing groups if somebody is having a Kundalini activation, because they normally go like this, and they'll just rock back and forth, and it's the body's instinctive way of trying to get some ease and relief of all that fire in the spine. Or they'll just go like this, back and forth, and it's fine. I always say, if you have to cry, cry. If you have to laugh, laugh. If you have to rock back and forth, that's fine. We're not going to judge you. Whatever you're doing is perfect for you in this moment. Carry on. It won't disturb anyone. And then sometimes people tremble. When we first started doing gazing 10 years ago, there was trembling and crying and all kinds of release going on in the groups. And then after a few years, people just calmed down and there was no more of that. The masters helped to settle their energies. And then finally, you can, as I said, be extra sensitive to light, noise, temperature, odors, and harsh vibrations. Now, I have to tell you something funny that I wasn't going to mention, but this is probably happening to you, or it might. And that is that when all this started happening, Jim and I would walk or drive down the street, and all of a sudden, street lights would go out. Then we would go by, and then after we were a considerable distance, they would go on again. Then we would back up the car to see if it were us, and they would go off again. So that was one thing. Then sometimes I would walk up to a computer and it would just stop. Or I would get in my car and all of a sudden the door locks would just go click, 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 click. They would lock and unlock, lock and unlock. And I was wondering, what is happening? How is my car doing this all by itself? And there were several other things having to do with machines and equipment that just would start up all by themselves. So I think that it was the heightened electrical energy in our bodies that made things happen. And then after a while, those energies smoothed out and it didn't happen anymore. All right. Now, I'd like to share with you some of the books by the late author guru Gopi Krishna. Oh, that dear man, what a sweet soul. He wrote 30 books while he was in agony most of the time, lying down, and his wife was spooning soup or oatmeal or pablum or rice into his mouth. And that's what he looks like. So let's go back to the chart so we can see. Okay, you may be able to get them. Okay, now here we are back on the books. Kundalini, that's good. Awakening of Kundalini, very good. Kundalini, the evolutionary energy in man, saved me. Then Kundalini, the secret of yoga, and Kundalini, the path to higher consciousness. And as we say, some of the people that attend these sessions are blind, so we like to read everything so that nobody is left out. www.thriftbooks.com for USA viewers sells books at good prices, which are sometimes out of print or very hard to get. Now then, we showed you the picture of Gopi Krishna. What light shines out of his face, and he was a very lovely person. I just discovered a few days ago that there are actually many little short videos of interviews of him. He's a delightful person, and he likes to approach this whole field from a standpoint of science, which I do too, which is why we're doing this, to help this spiritual science become more understood in the West and everywhere else as well. Now I'd like to tell you another person that has been important to me in regard to this. And this, as we said, is Sri Anandamayama, bliss-saturated mother, who was a late great Indian saint who had the 23-day Samhadi activation, as I said. Now then, it's been wonderful having you with us. The time has fled. So now we're going to review the teaching topics that we shared with you today. And I'm amazed at myself that I actually have the nerve to talk about this topic in such a short period of time. But we did cover the definition of Samadhi, the secrets of the Pranava or Om, fixing our attention on the tone, T-O-N-E, 4 states of consciousness, 3 levels of awareness, some childhood experiences of non-duality, Kundalini definition and experiences, Kundalini diet and lifestyle. Now, diet can usually consist of vegetables, soft, bland foods, seeds and nuts, and non-spicy foods, and milk products if you can tolerate them. Then we talked about some signs of active Kundalini, and there are many more. And then Sri Gopi Krishna and his book, Sri Anandamayama, several of my own Samadhi activations and their significance for me and others, and then thrift books, Gopi Krishna titles, and we ask you to write on your foot or leg the Grabavoy code for God Consciousness 555. You can also keep that number in your wallet or in your socks and just ask God to help you to experience God consciousness more consistently, or as Sai Baba says, constant integrated awareness, feeling the joy of being one with all that is. Now, the only reason that we are sharing these intimate experiences with you is, as I said, there was nobody to help us when these experiences ambushed us over and over. And we had to figure things out for ourselves before finding the books of Gopi Krishna and discovering that we were having a spiritual puberty and were exactly as and where we needed to be at the time. It was an enormous relief. Now, after I discovered Gopi Krishna and I was reading his books and keeping very detailed records about my experiences, I was prompted one day to write a letter to the Gopi Krishna Foundation in Toronto, Canada, which I don't think exists anymore. However, there are various other Gopi Krishna foundations around the United States and here and there around the world. You can do a search. And I just said, dear friends, I have really enjoyed Gopi Krishna's books, which have saved my sanity during these long Samhadi activations. I would like to send you herein a list of 84 charisms and gifts of the Spirit that happened to me during my longest Samhadi activation. I am only doing this, believe me, to see if I'm on the right track as far as you can tell, and if there's anything I should know or anything I should do differently. And thank you so much for taking the time and care to propagate the books of beloved Gopi Krishna for all of us that are struggling along in this process without any helpers. Now then, they wrote back a very no, and it's actually not so much a course that you take as a lifestyle that you embrace. Finally, we would like to repeat regarding mass awakenings that tens of thousands of people on earth have now become like ripe coconuts ready to fall from the tree. That is, God is going to grant them self-realization and is now preparing them for becoming solidly established in God consciousness. You were born for this. We were all born for this. And now we're in basic training and we're getting ready to step up to the plate and receive our marching orders and our instructions, whether that is within from guidance or in some other way. So here is a saying I like. Be absorbed in divine concentration. This will carry you safely across the stormy ocean of life. As we said, you can do this by concentrating on your signature sound of the pranava or om in your head or heart, no matter what you're doing, except driving a car. Do not do this when you're driving a car or chopping vegetables or handling any instruments or sharp items. Finally, know that you're beloved by the Lord and his heavenly host and by ourselves. We're now embarking on the most thrilling part of this divine drama on planet Earth, when you come to realize who you truly are, and when that realization empowers you to skillfully help the many people who are still sound asleep as to their true nature. Our next program will be on Saturday, May 29th at 2 o'clock p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. All of our live stream programs are saved so that you can view them repeatedly with powerful results each time due to the blessing and the presence with you of the Lord, the Masters, the Saints, and the Angels. All glory to God, and blessed be his holy name. As we said, we will send you the article within 24 hours. And we would like to say, Sairam and Namaste, you beautiful embodiments of love and compassion.
Bye-bye. Okay, it's over.
Okay.